Listen, I've been thrifting for a long time. I've got the back catalog and the certificate to prove it. Yeah, I'm a certified thrift goblin. And if you successfully complete this crash course that I'm about to take you on, then you can become a certified thrift goblin too. Hi, I'm Kathleen, and today I'm going to be sharing 9 of my most valuable tips for leveling up your thrifting experience. Whether you're new to thrifting or you're a seasoned thrift goblin like myself, I think there's something here for you. And for those of you who get overwhelmed at the thrift store easily, stick around because tip number 7 is for you, baby. Well, all of these tips are for you, but tip number 7 is especially you flavored. So let's get started. Tip number 1, we gotta get your hierarchy of needs sorted. Get out of here, need for love and belonging. I'm talking sustenance, hydration, sensory deprivation, your uniform, and a plan. Okay, this isn't a perfect metaphor. I don't think there's anything equivalent to self-actualization about thrifting, but stay with me, nerds. Let's start with sustenance. There's nothing worse than being hangry at the thrift store. Suddenly everything becomes very scary and very weird. So eat something before you go. Also, don't be scared to bring a little snack. That's what your thrift bag is for. And keep in mind that not every thrift store has a public bathroom, so prepare your bladder. Although some thrift stores always have a public bathroom, and that is a secret that we're going to touch on in part 2 next week. Yes, there are 2 parts to this How to Thrift series, can you believe? So make sure you subscribe so you can come back next week when I post it. Okay, continuing on. Next, a very important and often overlooked prep step, your uniform. It's not a given that fitting rooms will be available, and honestly, finding a mirror and trying stuff on right in the aisles is my preferred way of doing things. Anyways, all that said, wear something that is easy to put things on top of. My favorite option is simple. A dress. If you're not a dress wearer, I'd recommend athletic pants and a t-shirt and maybe a top layer as well, because you might get cold. I don't know. I worry about you. We'll take it a step further and wear some shoes that are easy to slip in and out of with socks. And finally, this is a little something extra that I find increases the success rate of my thrift trips. But consider, doing your hair in the way you like it. If you wear makeup, maybe wear a little makeup. That makes you feel good. A lot of times at the thrift store, we're trying on items that are a little more experimental, a little more out of our comfort zone. So anything we can do to make sure we're feeling our best when we're trying things on is a plus. Also, there's just something about the fluorescent lights in the mirrors at the thrift store that just make you look bad, All right, and finally, before we actually venture to the thrift store, we need a plan. I know, boring, but this is great for folks who tend to get a little overwhelmed at the thrift store. It could be as simple as, I'm looking for some tops for spring, or you could have a Pinterest board of inspiration, or a literal to thrift list. I have one of these, and a coat rack has been on my to thrift list forever. I know it's coming for me soon, I just have to be patient. Speaking of lists, it's also a good idea to have your measurements written down in your phone, and you might want to bring a little measuring tape. I always forget mine though, and end up just throwing the clothes on at the store. It works out. And the last thing we need to do before we venture to the thrift store is
make a sacrifice to the thrift gods.
But this is a given, so we don't need to dwell here long. Tip number 2, you may be wondering, well, when should I go to the thrift store? When do they put out the best stuff? As a seasoned thrifter, I can say that there is always treasure to be found. However, my favorite times to go are on a weekday, right when they open, or maybe an hour or 2 afterwards. There will be lots of racks coming out from the back to replenish the stock, although racks come out all day. So that being said, the only time that I would really avoid would be right before closing time. When they're not really bringing more racks out, they're more concerned with getting the store cleaned up for the next day. Also, you would have to pay me a lot of money to go to a thrift store willingly on half off day or a coupon day. I get it if you need to go for budget reasons, but if you're not strapped for cash, I don't think it's worth it. Okay, we're at the thrift store, and say we have 30 minutes to peruse the racks. What am I prioritizing? What am I skipping entirely? Tip number 3, pick and choose. Once you enter those hallowed gates, grab yourself a cart, pop in your headphones, and where do we start? This is where we pick and choose. And this is especially helpful for y'all that are new to thrifting. You don't have to look at every section. So maybe pick 2 or 3 sections, but once you get into those sections, look at everything. Don't skim. That's how you miss the good stuff. For example, I hate looking at jeans, so I don't look at jeans. So you're welcome for leaving you all of the delicious vintage Levi's. This next tidbit is kind of like a tip number 3.5, focus on easy wins. What I mean is certain sections are just innately easier to look through, simply due to the fact that the items are bigger or bulkier or arranged in a way that's easier to parse. For me, these sections are dresses, jackets, shoes, furniture, and the return rack. These items are pretty easy to look through, unlike pants and shirts, which are basically just like looking at the edge of a book and trying to parse what's inside. It's insanity. Why would I do that? And finally, the return rack is a curated treasure trove. Treasure trove. They're usually found by the fitting rooms or on the end of aisles, and these are items that were deemed worthy by someone to try on, so you're a bit more likely to find some high quality or cool pieces. This is especially helpful if you're thrifting in an area that's like really trendy and popular. If I walk into a thrift store and I see it is packed with stylish people, I'm making a beeline to the return rack first. Tip number 4. This is a hot tip that has led me to some of my most surprising thrift treasures over the years. When you're looking through your chosen sections, don't just look in your size. Look at everything. Oftentimes, if a rack is organized by size, it's not really organized by size, you know what I mean? So you'll find all kinds of sizes mixed together. Also, depending on the age of the item, sizing can vary wildly. Vintage items tend to be smaller than contemporary ones, and this is how I have found some of the most amazing gems tucked into random corners of the rack. This does bring up a good conversation about overconsumption and larger sized clothing items at the thrift store. It can be really difficult to thrift plus size items, especially ones that are in current trendy silhouettes. So if you don't need the larger sizes, then please try to leave them behind for people who do. I know I'm a fan of a larger fit on myself, a more comfortable fit, so this is something that I try to keep in mind all the time. Tip number 5. This is a juicy one. We're going to talk about what we look for and what we don't look for, what we avoid. So get your looking eyes open and your touchy fingies touching, because we're gonna dive in. There are certain aspects that clue me into if a piece is gonna be cool or unique just by glancing at it or running my fingers over it while I'm looking through the racks. Some examples include fabric, unique details, vintage tags. When I do feel the fabrics, I'm usually trying to feel for natural materials. Linen is a material that I like that has a pretty recognizable hand feel. It's usually lightweight and a little bit coarse, and it can be super expensive to buy new. And it's a great sustainable fabric, especially to buy secondhand. So I am always trying to get it for a steal at the thrift store. Also, if you've been around my channel for any period of time, you know that I'm a silk stan. So when I'm going through the rack, it can be kind of difficult to tell the difference between like silk and a slippery polyester. But silk will usually have a bit of a creamier feel and will be cooler to the touch, and it won't really like get caught on your skin the way that polyester will. I'll take a quick sidebar to say that I don't think buying man-made materials or fabric from the thrift store is bad. All I'm saying is that if I had the choice at the thrift store, I'd rather thrift silk than polyester. Am I over-explaining myself? You get it. Let's continue. Another thing I look for is unique or interesting details. From our position in the aisle when we're looking at the rack, this might look like a puffed sleeve poking out from the side, a shoulder pad, hot take, but I love a good shoulder pad. Maybe you see a cool neckline or a cuff sticking out from the rack. This is also a good time to keep your eyes open for unique patterns. There are certain colors and patterns that you don't see very often and are a good indicator that an item might be vintage. For example, if you see a terry cloth top, that might tell you that this item could be from the 70s, or silky jewel tones might tell you 80s or 90s. And I'm not saying that just because an item is vintage makes it better than any other item, but it does mean that you have a higher chance of finding something unique with details that you don't really see very often anymore. Alright, we talked about what to keep our elven eyes open for, but what are we not looking for? What are we avoiding? This is a tough question for me personally because I'm trying to give everything a chance at the thrift store. However, I do try to stay away from things that I already have a ton of in my wardrobe. I have so many blousey button-up layering shirts. Do I really need another one? Maybe. Secondly, I do my darn tootinest to avoid looking at tags. This is a tricky balance because on one hand, some brands have awesome quality, so you'll want to pick them up when you see the tag because you know they're great. But for me, where I currently am in my personal style journey, I'm really trying to focus on individual pieces and if it has that unique statement that I'm looking for, regardless of the brand. Another thing I'm really not on the lookout for are dry clean only tags. And what I mean is, if I see a dry clean only tag, I don't care. Did I sufficiently zag on you with that one? I would say 50% of the clothing in my wardrobe has a dry clean only tag. Have I ever gotten any of my clothing dry cleaned? No. And it all still looks great, which does not mean that I just throw it in the washer and dryer and hope for the best. But I'm going to talk about care instructions for your secondhand wardrobe in part 2 of this series. So make sure you come back next week if you care about that. For now, I will give you a tidbit and say that if I see a piece is rayon and it has specifically pleats or a seersucker texture, I'm gonna leave that behind. That might be a dry clean only option. Okay, tip number 6. Let's get creative. This tip is simple. Can an item be worn a different way? For example, can a dress be a duster? Can a skirt be a dress? Can a belt be a purse strap? The answer is yes. Tip number 7, stock up. This is the tip that I talked about at the beginning for those of you who might be getting overwhelmed at the thrift store and not really know what to look for. There are certain items that almost every thrift store has always. So it feels amazing to be able to roll up to the thrift store and walk out 5 minutes later with a treasure trove. Treasure trove. Why can't I say that? I call these items quest items because you always seem to need them and you never seem to have them when you need them. Here are some examples. Greeting cards. I love looking for vintage ones specifically because they have a certain level of chaotic energy that I just really get on board with. Another example, art and craft supplies. I'm talking printer paper, cardstock, markers, yarn, twine, string, all the things. And one of my favorite examples, planters / vases / baskets. Vessels, if you will. You can find the most beautiful hand-thrown pottery that would cost you hundos in a local fancy shop, or simple vases that you can gift with flower bouquets. Tyson Curates on Instagram recommends buying your Easter baskets from the thrift store, which I think is an amazing option. And you will never find yourself wanting for baskets at the thrift store. They just seem to spawn out of nowhere. And tip number 8, we're almost there, folks. It's time to try on and curate. So now that you've had time to forget everything in your cart, let's look through them and curate our selections. This little brain break that we gave ourselves is important because our initial reaction upon pulling that item back out of the cart is going to tell us a lot. Maybe our reaction is, why did I put this in my cart? Bye. Or maybe you've been thinking about the leather jacket that's been nestled in your cart this entire time. That seems like a buy. That's kind of confusing. Something I personally do as well if I'm having trouble deciding if I should get something is asking myself, am I going to be thinking about this in 24 hours? Probably not. Unless it's an amazing, unique statement piece, which is what I'm looking for my wardrobe, the answer is probably no. And now as we're curating, we're also going to start trying things on. This is when I like to use my thrifting uniform. I personally find it easier to just find a mirror and start throwing things on. If you're aware of your surroundings and you're not getting in anybody's way, this is perfectly normal and acceptable behavior. It's also totally normal for a bunch of strangers to take turns using the same mirror in the aisles, which it's a great way to make friends, I'm not gonna lie. And finally, tip number 9. Our last stop on this thrifting journey. And it's actually a cardinal thrifting rule and demand. Put stuff back. Put stuff back. Okay. Now listen, I know it can be daunting, especially if you have a cart full of putbacks, but this is what the return rack is for. Or you can pop the items back on the rack in their correct spot. It makes the workers' lives easier, and you get karma points with the thrift gods. This is a fact. You cannot fight me on this, because I've got the power of the thrift gods and anime on my side. So if you got to the end of this video and you're like, okay, Kathleen, I already knew all of that, then you are not going to want to miss next week's video, where I share my very favorite secret tips and hacks for finding the best stuff while you're out thrifting. And also, I'd like to ask for all of your help down in the comments as well. Do you have any high value tips that I didn't share in this video? Drop them in the comments down below and I'll feature them next week during a community spotlight section. Let's hive mind this and make this a super helpful resource for all of our new thrift goblin friends. I'm very curious to know if you had a favorite tip from this video, and if you're looking forward to part 2, well, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when I post it. With that, I'm gonna get out of here because I kind of want to go thrifting now. I hope you have a very stinky week in a good way, and I love you. Bye.